Don't use a virtual office address for your LLC until you watch this entire video. Now, if you have no idea what a virtual office address is, this is where you can essentially pay for just the mailing address of a physical location. So don't get tripped up with it being virtual because there isn't necessarily anything virtual about the address. It has more to do with you paying to have the rights of that mailing address, and you can attach that to your LLC. So I'll give you 3 examples of why people tend to purchase virtual office address. The first example is probably why you're watching this content right now, which is you're looking to set up your business in a way that's viable and in a way that's properly structured in the eyes of the bank, in the eyes of the business credit bureaus, in the eyes of vendors, suppliers, and so that it makes your business stand out and look more professional. Because there's a difference between you just renting out a mailing address between 50 to 150 bucks, depending on where you're actually getting it, whether it's in the middle of downtown or in maybe the outskirts of town, versus you getting locked into a lease of a couple $1,000 a month. And so if someone's goal is to just get the address, that would be the first reason why they would do it. The second is privacy. Like anything else, I don't know about you, but I don't want my personal information being out there, especially attached to my business. And so if maybe you have a business where you can technically run it from your house, but you don't want somebody doing a search on your entity and then them seeing, hey, this is actually attached to a home residence, and there's a lot of weird things that happen out there with people, then they can come knocking on your door and you get unsolicited visitors. And so the second reason why people set up virtual office addresses is for that privacy reason. And then the third reason is because you're looking to get access to business credit. This can help aid the fact that you can get access to business capital because it, again, makes your business look legit and it makes it stand out from the competition of all the other amateur businesses that aren't structured properly. I'm going to give you 4 pitfalls that you want to avoid when you're setting up your virtual office address that you want to avoid. Now, the information that I'm going to give you in this video is going to be agnostic. And so I don't care which virtual office company you use to buy virtual office address through, because I've seen them fall into any one of these 4 categories, which is why I'm giving it to you. So rather than just giving you, hey, buy your stuff here, because I've seen all of them fall short to this, I want to show you what to look for and how to think about this, because it's going to make you a better business owner as you're setting up your entity. So, or even resetting up your entity if you already have a business in place. So the first thing is, if you have a virtual office address that gets screened as a CMRA, you want to swap out the address altogether. Irv, what's a CMRA? That stands for Commercial Mail Receiving Agency. It's just a fancy way of saying that the address that you have that's attached to the LLC or to the entity, that address is just receiving mail on your behalf, but it's not a physical location of doing business, or that's actually at the grade that they would consider it being a physical business location. Remember what I mentioned earlier, where if you get yourself a virtual office address, don't get caught up in the word virtual. It has to be a physical location that you can drive into and actually work out of, which is why I recommend, if you're setting up your virtual office address, I always recommend setting it up in an area that you actually know, in an area that if you were to walk in, not just get your mail, but in an area, if you were to walk in, hey, can I do business out of here? Can I rent out a suite for maybe 24 hours to conduct a couple of meetings in this location? So get familiar with the actual physical location that you're purchasing. The second pitfall that I would watch out for, and we actually had this with a client and it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars in business capital, was everything about the business was structured properly, from the naming convention to the capital and the revenue rather that this business was bringing in, which was obviously going to pay dividends on the capital that he was going to get access to the classification of the business. Like everything was primed, ready to go, but one thing, and that one thing was the second pitfall that you want to avoid, and that was a PMB. Whenever you're getting yourself a virtual office address, if it has a PMB attached to it, so a private mailbox number, then you want to also consider getting that swapped out. And don't confuse this with it being a suites number. So suite 101 and PMB 101. The banking institutions, lenders, vendors, suppliers, business credit bureaus, federal agencies, they're all going to grade that completely differently. So what you want to have attached to the file is a suite, because that shows a reflection that it's an actual physical location, not a glorified PO box. That's all a PMB. That's all a PMB virtual office address is. It's a glorified PO box. And if you know anything about business credit, if you know anything about setting up LLCs, that's going to be a no go in this world. Number three, also cost a client a fortune until we were able to get this swapped out, was don't get looped in. Irv, what does that mean? If you have a registered agent, be extremely careful with this, because this happens quite a bit. Registered agents, I have nothing against them, but registered agents all use the same address for all of the clients that they have, because they're essentially receiving mail on your behalf. You're essentially parking your mailing address with a registered agent, and then they're maybe forwarding the mail your way, or they're obviously like a third party company where they're kind of like taking the mail and then they're obviously getting it out to you, whatever that is, right? I have nothing wrong with registered agents, but if you have a registered agent that's using all of the addresses for their clients, then what I'm about to share with you should alarm you, because we had a client that their business, he had just started it from scratch, and the address that he had for, in this case, from the registered agent, was an address that was attached to white collar to a white collar crime. What that meant was that once there was media, and once there was like you Googled the address and there was bad media on the address, there was an open case, there was a file, a police report, everything shooting back to this address saying, hey, this is the crime that was committed. These are the people involved. This was the entity involved. Like, it was a mess. Guess who got looped into that? He did. And so even though he had just built his business, even though he had just structured it in a way that was obviously going to put him on the right path, the one missing factor that ended up hurting his file until he obviously swapped that out, because this was a quick fix for us, was that address. Because then everywhere he went, guess what the first question was that they were asking? Suppliers, vendors, even the credit bureaus, when they were taking all of this data and they were plugging it into his credit ratings. Hey, wait a minute. It looks like you have an open file or an open case on your file against your business. Have you ever been so-and-so company? Have you ever done this, this, and this in the past? Have you ever been a part of this, this, and this like bust that was just done? And he would constantly have to explain, no, this is an address. I have a registered agent. And so he wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't doing anything illegal. It was just associated. And so, like, you've heard the saying, one apple ruins the bunch. It was the same thing here. And so if you have a virtual office address that's attached through a registered agent, then I would still recommend, if your purpose is to set this up the right way, still set up your own virtual office address that isn't graded with fraud or that isn't graded with bad media, because you do get looped into it, unfortunately. And then number 4 is, if your business or line of work specific to your state, and this is going to be like a caveat, specific to your state, specific to your county, or specific to your region, doesn't allow for you to have a virtual office address, then guess what? At that point, you may need to look into something else. I have 2 swaps for you. There are some instances where they may not look at a virtual office address, but they'll accept a home-based business address. This is completely at your discretion on whether or not you want to set up your home-based business address, because of what we said earlier. Some people prefer the privacy, but if you say, hey man, like, I'm good, I'm just selling stuff online, no one's looking me up, or hey, I'm good, all the clients that I work with, like, I know them personally, they're like family, then you're good. You can set yourself up with a home-based business address. I haven't seen a home-based business address deter someone from, being able to build their business properly, from being able to get access to business capital. The second route that you can take, again, if you have the bankroll for this, is to get yourself a physical location. One of the instances where I did see someone have to swap out their virtual office address into a physical location where they needed an actual lot was with an auto dealer. So every time they walked into the bank, every time they walked into a credit union, they just kept getting denied. And so every time they kept getting that letter in the mail, that dread letter, hey, why am I denied? It kept saying address. So address is improperly structured. Address is the language they were using is we can't verify the address. There's no validity on the address. And so in his form of remedy, he just had to swap it out, and then it was off to the races from there with getting access to things like business capital and obviously improving his credit ratings. And so those are 4 pitfalls that I would suggest looking out for if you have a virtual office address. Don't just stamp a virtual office address onto your LLC just because you saw a ton of videos on YouTube. If you found value in this content, consider sharing it with another entrepreneur who you think is going to find this content helpful. If you are looking to have a company come into your business, take a look at how you're currently running things, and help you put a simple funding setup into place so that you can not just get access to business capital now, but also get access to capital as you continue to scale. Would love to connect with you. Go ahead and book a call down below, insightinnercircle.com. See you on the other side, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.